with elections happening all over the globe, a huge part of the political conversation is happening online, especially right here on YouTube. So that's why today we're going to dig into YouTube's official election misinformation policy. What are the actual rules? And how do they make those calls on what stays up and what comes down? Let's break it down. So you have to ask, what's the big challenge they're trying to solve? Well, it's how you protect something as important as an election on a platform where, billions of videos are being uploaded and watched. YouTube's answer is a policy that zeroes in on a few very specific kinds of harmful content. The whole policy really boils down to preventing 3 specific categories of misinformation. So let's go through them one by one, starting with content that really targets the voters themselves. First up, we have something called voter suppression. And honestly, it's pretty much what it sounds like. This is any content that tries to mislead you about the actual nuts and bolts of voting, the kind of stuff that could literally stop someone from being able to cast their vote. And you can see just how specific they get here. This isn't about some vague general falsehoods. The policy goes after very practical, very misleading claims. Things like telling people a fake election date or giving them wrong information about what kind of ID to bring. The common thread is pretty clear. This is stuff that can directly mess with someone's ability to participate on election day. And that really gets to the heart of why this is a rule. We're talking about the potential for real-world harm. This isn't about policing a wrong opinion. It's about stopping content that could actually disenfranchise someone by making them miss the election or convincing them they aren't even allowed to vote. Okay, so for the second category, the focus shifts away from the voter and onto the candidates. This rule is all about misinformation that questions a candidate's basic legal right to even be in the race. So this covers the foundational eligibility requirements, like their age or their citizenship. Basically, if a candidate legally meets the criteria, you can't just post a video claiming they don't. It even covers the most extreme falsehoods, like, say, spreading a rumor that a candidate has died. And you can see the logic, right? If voters are fooled into thinking a totally valid candidate is somehow ineligible, it fundamentally changes their choices. The whole idea here is to keep the playing field of options accurate for voters. So, we've talked about misleading voters and misleading about candidates. This third and final category is a bit of a different beast. It's less about spreading false information and more about actively encouraging people to go out and interfere with the voting process itself. And the examples here are, well, pretty crystal clear. We're talking about content that urges real-world disruption or even digital disruption. Things like blocking access to polling stations or trying to hack election websites. The line gets drawn at speech that calls for direct interference. The reasoning for this one is really twofold. It's not just about protecting the mechanics of democracy, it's also about public safety. I mean, inciting this kind of stuff can put regular voters and election workers in real danger. Okay, so after hearing all of those rules, you're probably wondering, is it ever okay to show or talk about this kind of misinformation on YouTube? And the answer is yes, but. And this is a big but, there's a really important exception. And right here, this is the crucial distinction. You can't just promote misinformation as if it's a fact, but you can discuss it as long as your video provides what YouTube calls EDSA context. That's a mouthful, but it just stands for educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic context. So what does that actually look like? Well, a news report that analyzes and debunks a false claim? That's fine. A documentary that explains how a misinformation campaign works? Also fine. Even a satirical video that's clearly mocking election rumors can pass the test. The main thing is that the purpose of your video has to be to analyze or critique the misinformation, not to spread it. So we know the rules, but what actually happens when a creator breaks them? Let's take a look at the consequences. YouTube generally uses a progressive strike system. For a first offense, the video gets taken down and the creator usually just gets a warning. If they do it again, they get a first strike, which comes with some restrictions. A second strike means more restrictions, and if you get a third strike within 90 days, well, that's when the channel gets terminated. But, and this is a really critical point, the platform holds the right to skip that whole strike system entirely. For what they call severe cases, where the harm is really serious, a channel can be terminated immediately, on the very first offense. All right, we have walked through the what, the why, and the how of these rules. So let's just boil all of this down to the key things you should remember. When you get right down to it, the policy is really trying to do 2 things at the same time. On one hand, it draws a pretty hard line against content that could suppress votes, distort who you can vote for, or incite interference.
But on the other hand, it carves out this really important exception for journalism, commentary, and art that are trying to inform people, not misinform them.
And this all points to a massive fundamental challenge for these platforms. How do you balance that ideal of open expression with the absolute need to prevent tangible, real-world harm? It is a constant tightrope walk, and as the speed of information just gets faster and faster, figuring out how to find that balance is easily one of the most critical questions of our time.